Okay, so repetition is incredibly important in the process of manifestation. You have to repeat a mantra or a thought or an affirmation many, many, many times until it becomes real in physical terms. So inside of us it happens through something called neuroplasticity, which is the changes within the physical brain according to the non-physical thought patterns roaming through it. So for example, if your thoughts consist of love, compassion, and hope, then you create neural pathways in your brain which will cause more of those thoughts to flourish in the particular near future. Whereas if you focus on the opposite polarity, if you focus on fear, chaos, and negativity, that creates more thoughts oriented towards that polarity, which will manifest more inside and outside. So thoughts repeated create neural pathways in the brain physically, and also create experiential pathways in your outer physical reality. And you have to repeat a thought many, many times until it becomes true. So if you think, well, I've repeated this thought pattern, several hundred times, it hasn't manifested yet, try repeating it several thousand times and then see what happens. There are also multiple stages of manifestation. So the first stage of manifestation is focus. So you focus on a thought pattern, and then that begins to attract more electromagnetic energy to it. Then it becomes a thought form or a tool pod, begins to hold denser energetic properties, and then with even greater focus and backed physical action or verbal speaking, the thought form will in time become a physical manifestation. There's also a great deal of scientific evidence that we do create our reality with our minds. This has been proven through the placebo and nocebo effects, which is on everyone's mind now with the pandemic. So governments, corporations, and banks are currently telling people, you are totally powerless over your body, you have no control over your immune system, you can't control when you get sick, and you're basically at the mercy of us. You have to buy all these vaccines and pharmaceutical drugs and doctor's visits and so on, and that's highly, highly profitable for us and highly detrimental for you. What they will never tell you is that you actually create your health or disease or anything else with your mind, and healthcare or health is actually completely free if you really understand how it works. So in the placebo effect, you give someone a sugar pill, and you tell them this pill has magical healing properties, and the person actually heals themselves with their minds just by believing it. And in the nocebo effect, it's the opposite of that. You give someone a sugar pill, and you tell them this pill has terrible side effects. And if you're taking it, it's the exact same side effects, and the person actually makes themselves sick just by believing it. So we create our health or disease more so than any virus or bacteria, which is why the pandemic is basically a scam, because, even if you're alone by yourself in your house, you can still get the coronavirus because you're focusing on negative thought patterns of fear, chaos, and negativity. Whereas you can also create health and healing for yourself by focusing on thoughts like, I am perfect health, or I'm healthy, whole, and complete, or I can heal myself, or anything like that. There's also something called Epigenetics, which is the study of physiological and phenotypic trait variations that are caused by external factors which switch genes on and off rather than how cells read genes are being caused by changes inherently in the DNA sequence. And what this means in layman's terms is that our internal and external environments change the structure and function of our DNA. So, whatever genes you're born with at birth, that's sort of like being dealt a hand of cards. You can play certain cards and you cannot play other cards. And genes are switched on and off, and then your cells react automatically by changes in your external physical environment, and also by the structure and function of your thoughts and emotions, which is also how evolution works. So how evolution works is that every time a biological organism has an idea of what an improved life would be, they become, or successive generations become, that idealized improvement. So say I would like to have another appendage, an extra arm, for example, or an extra foot. I may not manifest that in one lifetime, but if I really focus on that, I get a whole bunch of other people to focus on that, we may eventually manifest a whole new appendage for the human race in the near future. So, for example, how evolution's worked in the past, organisms start out as single-celled, simple organisms, and then they all focus on, well, let's create more cells and bring more cells together. They became complex multicellular organisms that were still fairly small. And they said, let's see if we can create an even more complex and self-aware organism that draws energy directly from the sun and is sort of rooted in either the earth or the ocean, and then plants and similar fungi organisms were created. And then those organisms were dissatisfied with their existence, and they said, well, let's see if we can create something even more complex and more self-aware. Something that can move and detach from the earth a bit, and then animals were created. And then there was even greater collective focus where organisms said, what if we could become self-aware and have free will and detach from cosmic will and start to build things with our hands and visualize things with our minds? And then the human race appeared, which is kind of contested as to how exactly we occurred or what specifically happened. But that has been the general progression of evolution on this particular planet. There's also neuroplasticity. I alluded to previously that the brain rearranges the neuronal connections based upon whatever thoughts are occurring in your non-physical mind space. So there's a tremendous amount of scientific evidence that our thoughts shape our world, and another that I haven't talked about yet is called Psychoneuroimmunology, which is how the mind affects the body, and particularly the immune system. So probably the most insane example of the mind affecting the body that I know of is the case of a man named Mr. Wright, who both gave himself cancer and healed himself of cancer twice, just using his mind. So he had cancer. Initially, he went to the hospital, and the doctor said this isn't looking good. And he wanted an experimental drug that was usually given to horses, but he heard it could help him with this particular cancer affliction, and the doctor said, I don't want to give this to you, but I will because you're being so insistent, and he took the drug and his cancer was cured. Then he found out later on that the drug that he got didn't work very well, and it didn't work for a lot of other people, and so he thought, oh my god, the drug I got didn't work, and so he gave himself cancer again. He goes back to the hospital. The doctor knew that the drug he got was ineffective, and so he just gave him a saline solution the second time and said, okay, this is a better batch of the drug, even though he's just injecting it with salt water. And so Mr. Wright healed himself of cancer again. Then he goes home, he reads some kind of newspaper article that the drug company who was creating the drugs that he was making was involved in all kinds of fraudulent practices and illegal activities, and they had to be shut down. He thought, oh my god, the drug that I got the second time didn't work either. He gave himself cancer again, and then he died. So that's how the mind affects the body, how powerful it is. So there is an internal trinity within us consisting of self-consciousness, subconsciousness, and superconsciousness. Self-consciousness is masculine, intellectual, logical, thought-based, electric, and narrow in its range and scope of awareness. It's most concentrated in the left hemisphere of the brain. And then we also have subconsciousness, which is feminine, intuitive, creative, emotion-based, magnetic, and more expansive in its range of awareness. It's the unconscious body functioning and body powering principle. And then we also have superconsciousness, or cosmic consciousness, which is most concentrated in the heart, whereas these are concentrated in the left and right hemispheres of the brain. And this is akin to experiencing everything at once. You would experience cosmic consciousness or superconsciousness in these transcendental states when your frequency is vibrating super high, when you're transmuting delta waves through your brain, or under the influence of psychedelics from doing a long fast or a long meditation session or something similar to that. It kind of feels like you're going insane, that you're experiencing a tremendous amount of energy and information all at once. You feel like you're being stretched and you're connecting to your cosmic identity, whereas these are more familiar to our everyday personal experience, that, you know, we have conscious thoughts or whatever in the conscious mind, we have emotions that function beneath our conscious awareness to a certain extent that power our bodies, and then we also have transcendental, universal spiritual states. And so you become conscious, and then you start to gain conscious control of the conscious mind, which is the smallest part of the mind. And then you can start gaining conscious control of your thoughts. Then, with even greater progression along the spiritual pathway, you gain conscious control over your unconscious or subconscious process, like your emotions, your bodily processes, and things similar to that. You start changing your beliefs, start really changing what's going on in your reality. And then when you're super far spiritually advanced, you can gain more and more access to cosmic consciousness or super consciousness. And you start gaining more and more access to your cosmic spiritual identity. And these are all interconnected too. They're not totally separate. They sort of mingle together in one way or another. And the subconscious mind is sort of a buffer zone or filter between the conscious mind and the cosmic mind. And this filter is a great benefit to us because if we were always consciously connected to the cosmic mind, we would go insane and destroy our physical vehicles instantly. And this experience that we see in physicality would be far too similar to what we already experience in the spirit world. And so it's a good thing that we have this built-in, filter or buffer zone between the conscious mind and the cosmic mind. And they all interplay within each other, but we're mostly confined to this area. We have a bit more conscious access to this when we spiritually awaken, then when we are at a really high level of consciousness, we can gain access to this. And you can also send energy to any of these areas of yourself by focusing on any of them with your thoughts. So you can focus on masculine processes to generate energy to the self-conscious mind. You can focus on feminine processes to gain access to the subconscious mind. And you can also focus on cosmic spiritual processes to gain access to your heart or the cosmic mind. And if you're physically male or physically female, you usually have more access to one of these two polarities depending upon the orientation of your focus. So men are usually more in touch with this aspect of the self, and women more in touch typically with this aspect of the self. But they're both equally important, neither is greater nor lesser than the other. And once you become conscious, you can send energy to any of these areas that you want to and gain more and more access to any of those particular areas of consciousness. And then also, you can liken this internal trinity to an iceberg in an ocean of water. That the conscious mind or self-consciousness is the tip of the iceberg. It protrudes upwards from the water, it's most easily perceived, and the light of awareness illuminates this aspect of the self most effectively. But then beneath the surface we have subconsciousness, or the subconscious mind, which takes up a much larger part of the mind. It's a much more varied field of activity, but it's not as much illuminated by conscious awareness as the conscious mind is. And then the cosmic mind, or superconsciousness, or the heart, would be the ocean itself. That is the largest part of the mind, and it holds the temporal self or the subconscious and conscious minds within it as a portion or expression of its infinite identity. And so all of these also consist of water. And so when the iceberg melts, it returns to the ocean, and when we die, we return to cosmic consciousness. All right. So we are fourfold beings. We have 4 bodies, not just one. So we have physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual components, as well as ways that we perceive, receive, and reject psychic information. So the physical body that you see in the mirror each day is the one that you're all intimately familiar with. It's the physical vehicle that you see in the mirror, that you exchange, interact with other physical beings, and that you're most intimately acquainted with. It's not too mysterious to most of us. We also have an emotional body, which consists of our feelings and emotions, such as fear and love, which are really the only 2 emotions that exist, and all other emotions branch either directly or indirectly off of them. And then feelings are a bit different than emotions in that they exist outside of the physical body. So you can feel things that are going to happen in the future. You can feel the people's thoughts and emotions and things that exist outside of your body, whereas emotions are mostly confined to your particular physical vehicle. And this vibrates at a higher frequency than the physical body does because it's not entirely physical. And then above that is the mental body, which vibrates at an even higher frequency, which consists of our minds, the conscious, subconscious, and the cosmic minds. It consists of our thoughts, our beliefs, our mental focus, and anything that's going on within our particular mind space or in the cosmic mind space. And then we also have a spiritual body, which creates the other 3 bodies out of itself in order to know itself experientially, and this actually extends across the entire physical universe, and then also into other universes. The mind also does that to a certain extent, but it's not as far-reaching as the spiritual body is. The emotional body has a less proximal scope, and then the physical body is, obviously confined to this one point in space and time. You can't have multiple bodies in the same space and time yet. And also, we have 4 different ways to receive, perceive, and project psychic information. So, physical psychic information comes through as bodily sensations. So, for example, you may be around someone who has chronic pain in their back, and then you start to feel pain in your own back. And then emotional psychic information comes through as feelings. So, that's when you're around someone who you get bad vibes from and you feel really bad around that person, like I need to get away from this person. Or the opposite is also true. You can be around someone who you feel like I really need to have a strong relationship with this person. You feel intense positive emotions around them. That's the universe saying, you can have a relationship with this person or you can't have a relationship with this person. And then the mental psychic information comes through as imagery in the 3rd eye or the mind's eye or the 6th chakra. And so you would just see this as images in your mind space. So I can give you an example of this. I was victim to a scam almost multiple times in recent years where someone approached me at random locations, 3 different people selling the same scam. So they said, hey, I'm running this business with my friends, we can generate passive income, would you be interested? And they say, oh yeah, before we do this meeting, read this book that was written by Robert Kiyosaki and then tell me what you think about it. And so the meetings I had with these people, either in person or over the phone or over Zoom, they never told me exactly what their business was or how it works or how they could generate continuous passive income. They said, oh, well, you do a few more meetings, you come down the line, and then we tell you what this business is or how it works. So the 3rd time this happened to me, I had an in-person meeting with this guy, and I saw in my mind space, this is the exact same scam that someone has tried to sell you on twice before in the past. And so I immediately stopped the meeting right then. Once I got that information, I said, you know what, I'm not doing this. This is a scam. There's absolutely no way I'm going to be working for you. And the fact that you won't tell me exactly what you're doing or how it works until I do 5 or 6 more meetings with you and your comrades is pretty dark. So darkness, or dark occultists, or dark people, or unconscious people in general, will withhold information from you, either intentionally or unintentionally. Whereas light, heart-centered people, people that you should have in your reality, will always tell you the truth as often as they possibly can, just tell you whatever you need to know immediately, without any kind of, let's do some more meetings, or read this book, or let me sell you on this scam. So that's an incredibly useful faculty of psychic awareness. And there are also people who can actually see energy fields in and around all things, but that's pretty far down the spiral. There are very few true extrasensory people, although the more that you work on your third eye chakra, the more you can see energy fields inside and outside. And then spiritual psychic information comes through as just pure information. It's you downloading information or channeling, where you just instantly know what's going on a mental level without kind of imagery or feelings or bodily sensations. That's just pure spiritual information. So most people have one of these stronger in their being than any other, but you can also develop any of them by focus and physical action. So you can develop your physical psychic senses by doing what they're doing in this picture, things like weightlifting and working on your physical body, or being really in tune with your physical body, or working on your lower 3 materialistic chakras. You can also be more in tune with your emotions, your emotional body, by doing emotional body work or inner child healing or shadow work, and really tune into the emotional faculties that you have. You can also develop your mental faculties through studying knowledge and visualization techniques and meditation and so on. And then, the spiritual body really overlaps the mental body a lot. So a lot of things that develop your mental body also develop the spiritual body. This would be, pure spiritual practices like yoga, meditation, taking psychedelics, fasting, and things like that. So, for example, my strongest psychic sense is my emotions. I'm a super emotional person. You may not be able to tell that just by looking at me, because I've done a tremendous amount of meditation, but this is my strongest psychic sense, and I have really strong, intense feelings around different people, in different environments, and I experience like sensory overload most of the places I go, so I have to, really reel my emotions in so they don't totally overwhelm my actions. Okay, so we also have conscious and subconscious thoughts. Subconscious thoughts also create your reality, and so you have to be aware of your emotions and what your beliefs are and what your core beliefs are, because that's kind of delving down beneath your conscious awareness. Whereas your conscious thoughts, you're intimately acquainted with those. It's just whatever pops up in your mind space. But your subconscious thoughts take shape as your beliefs, your core beliefs, your feelings, and your emotions. And so it's a bit harder to be aware of them or to change those. And then emotions are also our primary compass for life. I've sort of alluded to this previously, that, positive emotions say you're going down the right way, negative emotions say you're going down the wrong way, and if you're emotionally numb or neutral, then you need to change something that you're doing until you feel some kind of intense emotional pull in a specific direction. So we have 3 primary ways that we receive guidance in the universe. We receive guidance primarily on emotional, mental, and spiritual, and then physical levels. The mental and spiritual ones kind of overlap because you experience both of those in your mind space primarily. So emotions, positive emotions say you're going in the right way, negative emotions say you're going in the wrong way. Same thing with your thoughts. Positive thoughts say you're going in the right way, and negative thoughts say you're going in the wrong way. And then outside of us we have synchronicity, which are meaningful occurrences that you can't explain through a direct cause and effect relationship. So I can give an example of synchronicity. My life path number is 5, and you can derive your life path number by taking your birth date down to the digital root, which is just adding a numerical sequence together over and over again until you get down to 1 digit. And we're shooting this particular class in my friend's apartment here, and the digital root of his apartment is 5. It's 1004, and then the digital root of the Wi-Fi password 824 is also 5, because 8 plus 6 is 14, and 1 plus 4 is 5. And I can't force something like that to happen, but I know that's the universe saying you're going down the right path. So we basically live in a highly emotionally abusive society that we make emotions either not okay or only acceptable in certain circumstances and ways, and we basically totally suppress all negative emotions, which is why they come out so strongly, as violence or crime or corruption or things like that. And most men are also usually extremely emotionally abusive to other men, that to be a man means to be shut down emotionally, which is not even remotely true. Emotions are our strongest compass for life, so when you shut down to emotions, you basically have no primary guidance, rather you're basically totally screwed. You need to really open up those feeling centers again. And then, with young girls and young boys are told boys or men don't express emotions and that's overly feminine, and with women we say, you can't be overly aggressive or masculine, it's not what a woman is, but that makes you energetically imbalanced. So we all possess masculine and feminine attributes within us, and so to be truly energetically balanced, you have to access both polarities of being, access both your masculine side and your feminine side and everything between, and then your spiritual side, which is both in neither of those simultaneously. And so we can heal the wounds in our emotional body through shadow work, through present moment awareness, acceptance, and detachment, which I'll get more into later on. But you basically be totally present when intense negative emotions arise within you and try to gain mental awareness of what is this and what can I do to resolve this. And then resistance and allowing are also important concepts to understand. So resistance is a state of negative focus, and allowing is a state of positive focus. If you're focused on negative thought patterns, you feel intense resistance and tension inside. If you're focused on positive thought patterns, you feel positive emotions and positive sensations inside. Okay, so now I'd like to talk about the 100th monkey effect. So the 100th monkey effect came to light in an experiment conducted in 1952 by scientists on the island of Koshima in Japan. So the scientists gave macaque monkeys sweet potatoes that were covered in sand. The monkeys liked the sweet potatoes, they weren't too fond of the sand. And so some of the animals initially found out how to wash the sand off the sweet potatoes in the ocean. And then some of the other animals saw them do that and learned how to do it just by observing. But then there was a critical mass, or critical quantity of animals was reached when they all learned the behavior was about 100. And somehow, once that critical mass was reached, the behavior spread through non-physical means to all the monkeys in the nearby islands, regardless of if they actually saw the action performed or not. And so what this means for human beings and evolution is that, if you're spiritually awakened, trying to awaken humanity, you don't have to necessarily spiritually awaken everyone. We just need to get to a certain critical mass, and then everyone will automatically evolve to the next level of consciousness together as one. And so that's also in terms of how evolution works, that, an entire sentient species, or even just a non-sentient species, doesn't have to necessarily observe an action be performed. They can just download that action from the quantum field of information and energy that permeates through all of linear space-time. So we also mentally influence the behavior of people around us through our thoughts and emotions. You must be incredibly cautious with this kind of power, because whatever you project out to you, whatever you project out returns to you in like form. So if you become a profoundly manipulative person, then you will attract profoundly manipulative people into your life. And so, you only really need to use this power whenever you're in intense, chaotic circumstance, like someone's, about to harm you, or people are screaming at each other, something like that. Most of the time, you don't necessarily have to take control of other people and try to influence them to do what you want, because that's going to attract unnecessary, undesirable experiences to you. This is actually shown in the movie Star Wars. There's a stormtrooper stopped Luke and Obi-Wan and said, we need to talk to you. Have you seen any droids? And I need to see your identification. And then Obi-Wan uses this mudra where you put your thumb and your forefinger together, and you extend the other three fingers, and he says, you don't need to see his identification. And the stormtrooper says, oh, I guess I don't need to see his identification. And he said, he can go about his business. We can just move along, and they just let him go. And so there are dark occultists who do this kind of thing to the masses all the time through the entertainment industry, through mainstream media, through governments, corporations, and banks. They try to force their will upon other people and mentally manipulate other people constantly, but that also comes back to them. A lot of them end up in jail or get killed or betrayed by their fellow brothers in secret societies, so, they're not immune from the law of attraction either. So really just use your power of mental influence when it seems absolutely necessary, and don't try to manipulate every single person that you encounter. Just trust that whatever happens is alignment for you in any given moment most of the time, unless it seems to be an intensely dense circumstance. And then animals also communicate to each other through thought and emotion, which is how, geese can fly in large groups, and they can switch who's flying in front like some kind of clock, and then fish can swim in large schools, and, there are lots of animals that travel in herds, but they don't have any kind of form of verbal communication, so how exactly are they doing that? It's because they're communicating with each other through thought and emotion, and also electromagnetic energy pulsations. And then we can also do that as humans, but we choose to look through the eyes of the temporal self only and say, screw everyone else, I'm just going to do what's best for me. We really need to get back to oneness, move in one kind of collective, positive direction. Alright, so Dr. Masaru Emoto created fascinating experiments with water. He put water into glasses, wrote phrases on the sides of those glasses, and then froze them, and then observed the results. So this is the glass that had thank you on it, and this glass had love and appreciation written on it. As you can see, they're frozen beautiful sacred geometric patterns, which you can see in snowflakes and throughout nature. This is a glass that said, you make me sick, I will kill you. You can see it frozen in these jagged, chaotic, unpleasant looking lines. And that actually looks kind of like a man holding a weapon trying to kill someone with it. And so how this applies to us is that our thoughts and emotions literally change the structure of our bodies dramatically because we're made mostly of water. And they also did another interesting experiment with water, that he put rice in beakers of water and then treated those beakers in 3 separate ways for a month. To the first beaker he said, thank you, each day. To the second he said, you're an idiot. And the third he completely ignored. So after a month, the rice that had been thanked began to ferment, exuding an alluring scent. The rice in the second beaker became black, and the rice in the third beaker began to rot. So we can apply the experiments, or the results of that experiment, to our interactions with other people. And that sending out negative energy to someone is not as bad as withdrawing energy from them entirely, because you're still sending energy to and feeding the receiver of your energy, whereas sending positive energy fosters growth, expansion, and harmonious results. So we can also command our body to do things with our mind. We do that all the time. So, for example, you can repeat internally, body relax, and you will feel your physical vehicle relax. You can activate your immune system by repeating the phrase internally, I am perfect health, or I feel perfect health. You can also create different emotional states and stimulate the production of various chemicals and hormones and neurotransmitters by focusing on different chakra areas and repeating mantras relative to those chakras. So, for example, you focus on the heart chakra, repeat internally, I love and accept myself as I am, and then the thymus gland and then the physical heart will produce the hormones oxytocin and produce more electrical activity as well. So we use the terms ease and dis-ease frequently in our society without really enumerating on what that means. So we're in a state of ease, we're much less likely to contract a dis-ease, we're much more healthy and creating greater healing, health, and vitality within. And then when we're in a state of dis-ease or stress or tension, we're more likely to contract a dis-ease. Alright, so emotions denote our vibrational frequencies. So positive emotions say you're vibrating at a high frequency, negative emotions say you're vibrating at a low frequency, and then when you're feeling neutral, then you're kind of in between a high and low frequency. And then thoughts also denote our frequencies. So thoughts that are contracted and vibrating at a low frequency are usually attached to really dark and dense things connected to a narrow scope of awareness, but thoughts that vibrates at a high frequency will be at a much more positive, expansive state of awareness. So a negative thought would be, I hate myself, or I can't stand the way that I look, and you're like just focus on this one specific aspect of reality, whereas a positive, high frequency, expansive thought would be, I'm connected to the entire physically manifest universe, and I'm infinitely powerful. So shadow work is the art of becoming conscious of the unconscious. It was brought into mainstream psychology through the work of psychologist Carl Jung, who noticed that his clients had certain aspects of themselves they were aware of and aspects of themselves they were entirely unaware of. And he also noticed for himself, I have certain dark aspects of my consciousness, certain aspects of me that I feel like, well, why do I do these self-destructive things? And I'm doing these self-destructive patterns, and you realize, I have shadow content as well. So when we're born as whole beings, but we usually experience a tremendous amount of trauma, pain, suffering, and conditioning from other people, and so we suppress, deny, disown, reject, and split our consciousness into multiple parts. We suppress things that we deem to be unacceptable about ourselves or about other people in the world, and it fades beneath our conscious awareness. So an example of this would be, your parents tell you you can't ever be angry around me, so you suppress all negative emotions relative to anger beneath your consciousness. And so that creates a schism within you, may create health problems or problems in your relationships. But then you can also suppress desirable aspects of yourself. So say you are a young girl who has a very strong sense of self-empowerment, and you take control of your life and your circumstances, but then you're told by your parents, oh, well, young girls and young women are not empowered, that they do what men or authority figures or someone else tells them to do, then you'll suppress your self-empowerment beneath your conscious awareness, and I'll have all of these dark aspects of self relative to empowerment, and may get into really abusive relationships with other people, where you basically totally abandon your personal power. So we can judge things, or we can observe them. So judgment means attaching desirable and undesirable labels to absolutely everything you experience, which creates a tremendous amount of unnecessary pain and suffering. Whereas observing things, you just observe what you experience inside and outside without attaching to anything that you experience, which is the state of detachment. So when you're attached to something, like your thoughts, your emotions, your body, or external experience, you experience tremendous pain and suffering, because those are all extremely unstable phenomena, and they're constantly alternating between diverging polarities. Whereas when you're in a state of detachment, you allow inner and outer experiences to flow through you. Without attachment, you experience much more inner peace inside and outside. So we have to face and accept all that is within us and all that is outside of ourselves, because otherwise we'll never experience pain, suffering, conflict, unnecessary negativity. So with that, I would like to go ahead and take a break. Daryl